It's like a petrified rock you got in there.
It's massive.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Viral Flex. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get more videos like this one. Now, let's get started. Today, we are going to be talking about 8 of the worst blackheads Dr. Pimple Popper has popped. Make sure you stay until the end of the video because you don't want to miss any of the 8 worst blackheads Dr. Pimple Popper has popped. Number 1. In one of her YouTube videos, Dr. Pimple Popper works to unmask a patient by removing the stubborn blackheads gathered around his eyes. The repeat patient has been lovingly nicknamed the Masked Man by Dr. Lee due to his blackheads formation. This particular video chronicles the Masked Man's 3rd visit to Dr. Lee's office. In their first meeting, the famed derm removed some sticky, stubborn blackheads from his mask, prescribing Retin A to help loosen the remaining clogged pores for his next visit. During his 2nd visit, the patient got a steam facial, which further loosened the blackheads and led to more successful pops. Now the patient is back for another facial and to give the most stubborn blackheads the boot. In the video, Dr. Lee uses a cum-dun extractor to push down on the man's mask, forcing out the last of his blackheads. Interestingly, Dr. Lee uses the man's bone structure to aid in removing, pushing down his brow bone and cheekbone to force the blackheads out. I like the ones around his eyelid because they are a little tough to get, but they are satisfying, Dr. Lee says in the video. Dr. Lee is so successful in her removals that she no longer has a backlog of blackheads to get to. You know you are doing better when I start to look around, Dr. Lee says as she scans the patient's face for more skin concerns. Thankfully for this patient, not much. The proof is in the before and after photos Dr. Lee shares in this video, which are genuinely incredible.
Almost better, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, almost there.
Number 2. Doris, identified only by her first name, explained that she sought Lee's help for a giant blackhead situated by her right ear.
None of my grandchildren have ever seen me without this blackhead. It's a ghost of Christmas that I need to get rid of.
Once seated in an exam room with Lee, Doris explains that her sister used to try and squeeze out the blackhead, but stopped after an extraction attempt in 1975 that caused pain. This looks like what we call the unicorn here in dermatology, Lee said during the special. It is pretty rare to have something this big. It's called a dilated pore of Weiner, and that is just a giant blackhead that has gotten so big it stretches out the pore. While dermatologists don't know why some people get them, they think that sun exposure and cystic acne history may be risk factors. Lee made an incision across the top of the DPOW, then used gentle pressure to squeeze out its hard, black cap. It's like a petrified rock you got in there, Lee said to Doris during the procedure. That thing's pretty hard. That's your lump of coal. Next, Lee used a spoon-like tool called a curette to dig out the remaining DPOW contents, then stitched up the skin where it had been so the hole it left behind would not refill.
Doris's cheek is a little tighter on one side, but her smile is so much brighter without that big old blackhead on her face.
Number 3. In a YouTube video, Dr. Pimple Popper digs a tunnel in a woman's back to remove a massive blackhead. And you won't believe how deep this man-made cave goes. In the video, Dr. Lee nicks the blackhead to make the extraction less harsh on the patient's skin. She then uses a cum-dun extractor to push down on the blackhead, causing an eruption of compacted skin and oil. Dr. Lee then uses a curette, a small, scoop-like surgical tool, to clear out any compacted skin left in the open pore. After the removal, the hole left behind was amazingly and frighteningly deep, which is actually a good thing. Dr. Lee explains it would help the growth heal from the inside out, hopefully preventing any regrowth from occurring. Toward the end of the clip, Dr. Pimple Popper removes a few scattered blackheads on the patient's back, which are much smaller. In total, the derm removes about 5 specks dotted around the patient's back. Dr. Lee also flashes a huge inflamed blackhead hidden under a bandage on the patient's shoulder during the video. That growth, Dr. Pimple Popper says, has to be removed another time when it is less angry. I wanted to see that big, juicy, inflamed one get excised, one fan commented on the video. Well, that's certainly something to look forward to. Number 4. Dr. Pimple Popper herself posted a seasonally appropriate pimple pop video on YouTube, and the emoji she used in her caption really says it all. Dr. Lee's patient this time was a young teenager who came in to get help with a cluster of pesky blackheads on his face before going to school. If you're a teenager, you know very well that learning how to get rid of blackheads can come in a clutch, but why sweat it when you have a famous dermatologist you can call instead? Lucky kid. In the video, Dr. Lee dives right in, popping pimple after pimple in short order with her extractor. Initially, many commenters thought the teenager's nose was actually a huge cyst and wondered why it was being so dutifully ignored. Number 5. In an Instagram video, Dr. Pimple Popper drags out some jammy blackheads from a patient's ear, including a massive mama blackhead. Grab your toast and settle in, folks. In the video, Dr. Lee uses a cum-dun extractor to press down on the woman's ear, pulling out several blackheads in the process. But those tiny jammy gems aren't the growth she wants. Buried in the patient's ear is a particularly big blackhead that Dr. Lee was after. Eventually, she's successful, producing an icky worm-like result. A blackhead is a single pore filled with dead skin and oil, forming a blackhead when exposed to air. The white portion of a blackhead is actually the same material as the black cap, only this material hasn't been oxidized to create a black coloring. But one notable part of this video doesn't even have to do with the blackhead removals. It's the conversation Dr. Lee has with the patient.
I was in the mirror for 30 minutes today because I had to take Amelia out next to my eye.
Number 6. It's no secret that Dr. Pimple Popper pops some gnarly stuff out of her patients. The dermatologist and TLC host has removed squishy, grapefruit-sized fatty lipomas and popped oozy, butter-like cysts. But there's something about a classic blackhead, and that's what she's bringing fans now. In one of her Instagram videos, Dr. Lee was tasked with removing multiple blackheads from a patient's back. As usual, she's got her handy extractor tool and pressed firmly into the skin to free the worm-like contents of the bumps. No, blackheads aren't made of worms, but the congealed dead skin cells and sebum actually found in the plugged follicles certainly resemble the creatures. As Dr. Lee moves from blackhead to blackhead, more wormy contents emerge and even begin to wiggle as she twists at her patient's skin to be sure all of the inner gunk of the blackhead is free. As she pops, her patient jokes that he'll be back in a month for more of her popping services. But she's a bit more optimistic about his blackhead production.
Well, not necessarily. Give it give it 6 months.
Number 7. In Dr. Pimple Popper's Instagram video, she helps a patient with tons of clogged pores and blackheads all over her cheeks. The blackheads have burrowed deep in the skin and require extra tools for extraction. Dr. Pimple Popper uses her scalpel and cum-dun extractor tool to clear them all out one by one. These blackheads have popped up and clogged tons of pores around her patient's cheeks. They're grown in her smile lines and right in the middle of both cheeks. Some have burrowed so deep under the skin that Dr. Pimple Popper has to slice them open in the Instagram video. The video begins right in the middle of the action as Dr. Pimple Popper is seen taking aim at one blackhead with her cum-dun extractor tool. She puts pressure around the clogged pore and it all comes out on command. That's only the beginning. As the camera pans around, the sheer number of blackheads waiting for extraction becomes clear. There are so many, I've lost count. Dr. Pimple Popper takes them on one by one and with expert precision. Only one causes her to pause and switch tools. It requires a scalpel slice to get moving. Once it does, a whole stream of thick gunk spills out. Number 8. In Dr. Pimple Popper's new Instagram videos, she helped a patient with one giant under-eye blackhead. Dr. Pimple Popper goes in with her come-down extractor tool and comes out with the whole blackhead in a big blob. Her fans were so excited to see the return of blackheads. That's not all Dr. Pimple Popper had in her treatment room, though. Another patient brought in a pick-apart lipoma. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.